Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Packernet Podcast. I am your host and resident fanalist, as always, Ryan Schlipp. Check us out online, packernet.com. Find me on Twitter, pack_data. So I mentioned yesterday when we went through some of the Packer stuff, some of the Jordan Love stuff in particular, that we might need to kind of sit in this one for a little bit. And I decided to go ahead and do that, rather than trying to do something else and then circle back to it. How about we just actually dig into it a little bit? So it's tough because of all the stats that you can find, and there are a lot of them, it's hard to find some that allow you to filter week to week, especially when they're non-consecutive weeks. Some of them you can pick weeks 4 through 7, but you can't do, 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9, etc., etc. But I put together a list of stats using PFF as well as, I can't remember the name of the site, the one that has DVOA on it. And I looked at his stats when healthy, when hurt, and then overall. Now, a lot of this, and I know we just did part of that yesterday. Yes, Warren Sharp did look at that. I want to do it myself, though. I want to be able to grab everything that I find to be at least somewhat relevant. I do have yards per attempt. I know I was making fun of him for that yesterday, but I added it because it's a thing. But I grabbed all the stats that I could just to get a picture. I didn't want it to be cherry-picked. I didn't want to think, okay, well, what about this? What about that? I want to see everything that I can see. I also want to go through and check the weeks myself to see what specifically are we talking about. When was he hurt? How hurt was he? All that stuff. And that's going to be the biggest complicating factor is the split between hurt and injured. There's several different categories. I split it up into 2. There's healthy and hurt. In reality, you have games in which he was hurt in that game. You have games in which he played but was hurt. Then you have games where he was quote-unquote healthy, which the standard for healthy that I put was not on the injury report, where he probably wasn't fully healthy. He wasn't on the injury report, but I'm sure he had lingering or ailing issues, right? I don't know exactly where the standard is for being put on the injury report, but generally, if you're on the injury report, it's because you're going to be doing some kind of limited participation. If you're full go, even if your knee is hurting like a son of a gun, but we feel like you can push through it, we don't need to limit your activity and practice, then we're not going to put you down as a limited participant. Everybody's a little bit hurt, right? So I don't know the full extent of how healthy was he. Nobody's at 100%. Where was Jordan? I don't know. But it's as good as I can probably get it. I do want to go over his injury history really quickly because even I need the refresher. One of the things that I had been... Again, when I do the podcast, I talk about things shorthand based on my recollection, which is sometimes not fully correct. One of the things that always I don't know if I ever directly said anything, but one of the things that always bothered me about the Jordan Love injury thing is that the injuries were front-loaded, specifically the knee injury, obviously, but it felt like the offense really tailed off on the back end. Things really started to get worse. And again, my recollection is kind of shaky on that. I know we had a tough schedule, but I know for sure Jordan didn't play very well against the Eagles, right? The defense played really well. It was a really well-fought game, but man, Jordan just did not look good at all. So that kind of stuff kind of stuck with me. Embarrassingly, I will admit, I didn't fully remember the second injury that he had mid-season. I know he had kind of got dinged up here and there. I didn't remember the full extent of that injury. Even worse, I forgot he had a third injury. So let's go through this really quickly. The one everybody remembers is the knee injury week 1 against the Philadelphia Eagles in Sao Paulo, Brazil. He obviously entered the game healthy, but he exited the game late after suffering a grade 2 MCL sprain on the final drive. Now, again, I could probably put the Eagles game in there because he was healthy pretty much the entire game, but I didn't. I got to draw the lines somewhere. I figure the fact that it was a sloppy crap fest game anyways, it doesn't really matter. But his initial recovery timeline was 3 to 6 weeks, later refined to about 3 weeks for a lower grade injury. He was out against the Colts, out against the Titans, returned after limited practice week 4 against the Minnesota Vikings, as we talked about yesterday. The issue here largely is that when he played that game, it became very evident he probably should not have been back. The fact that he didn't practice the entire week and then got thrown in, I think, was a very serious problem. It also is probably part of the reason why they didn't realize the extent of his injury, or at least the fact that he didn't trust his knee. How would they know? He wasn't in practice at all. Packers lost that game 31-29. So far he's played in 2 games, had 2 injuries, and lost both games. Starting week 5, there was no injury designation and was a full participant. He was healthy against the Rams. The Packers won that game 24-19. He was healthy, again, these are in quotes, but he was healthy against Arizona. No issue reported on the injury report. Full participant in practice. Packers won that game 34-13. Against the Houston Texans, he was again healthy, no injury concern, full participant. Packers won 24-22. Week 8 against the Jacksonville Jaguars, he was healthy entering the game, but had a groin strain during the game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. So he was healthy for maybe 3 weeks before he had a groin injury week 8. Played but exited in the third quarter with a grade 1 groin pull after favoring his left leg, described as not serious, with no multi-week absence expected. Packers won that game 30-27. Week 9, he was not healthy. He was questionable, but was active. He was limited in practice, non-participant early in the week, but started and played through the injury, admitting post-game it was an adversity he fought. Day-to-day leading up, I don't understand why that's... Anyways, day-to-day leading up, Packers lost 24-14. Week 10, he had a bye week. This was the week where, again, he was supposed to recover from his injury. Week 11 against Chicago, he was a full participant. No groin issue reported. Again, you can put that in quotes. I don't know how healthy he fully was, whatever, but he was not on the injury report, was listed as healthy, was a full participant in practice. Packers won that game 20-19. Week 12, he was healthy against the 49ers, no injury designation, full participant. Packers won 38-10. Played the Dolphins November 28th, was healthy, no issues, full participant. Packers lost 30-17. Week 14 versus the Detroit Lions, he was healthy, no injury concern, full participant. Packers lost 34-31. Week 15 against Seattle, he was healthy, no designation, full participant. Sunday Night Football, Packers won 30-13. Against the Saints, healthy, December 23rd, no issues, full participant. Packers won 34-0. Week 17 against the Vikings, healthy, no injury report, full participant. Packers lost 27-25. And then against Chicago, he was healthy entering the game. He suffered a grade 1 right elbow sprain during the game. Packers lost 20-19, clinching a playoff spot despite the defeat. Wild card round, January 12th versus Philadelphia, listed with an elbow injury, but cleared from the report after practicing. Started and played fully despite the ailment from Week 18. Packers lost 34-31. So, all in, and again, we'll assume he was somewhat injured, but when he's not on the injury report, we'll just say he was healthy. He was hurt weeks 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, 9, by week 10, and then got hurt again week 18, and then in the playoff game was injured with an elbow injury. That's a lot of games. 3 different injuries. And again, the idea in my head was like, well, at the end of the season, they didn't play very well. Well, that's really not true. I mean, so we lost to Detroit, barely, right? But we lost to Detroit, okay. One of the most dominant teams in NFL history. Again, just going off of DVOA, just shockingly dominant. Then we whooped the crap out of Seattle and beat New Orleans 30-0. So 2 games, 30-13 and 34-0. That was weeks 15 and 16. Not exactly the offense falling off a cliff here. Week 17 against the Vikings, again, playing very, very well, and it was just a 2-point loss. And then the Bears, again, hard to call that a big fall off. The Packers had clinched. I put a lot of blame on the coaching staff for coming in with this half-hearted, we're going to play the starters and then pull the starters thing. Either play them or don't. You decided to play Jordan Love, and Jordan Love got hurt in that game. That may have cost us. We were very close to beating the Eagles. If we had a healthy quarterback that didn't play as poorly as he did, again, presumably in part because of an injury, very good chance we beat the Eagles in that game. Can't guarantee we win a Super Bowl after that, but that was a silly decision. Either put them in or don't put them in. I don't understand putting them in for half the game, just long enough to get hurt, but not long enough to win the game. It was the worst of both worlds. But yes, the Packers played the Bears. They played for, I don't know, a half or so. Jordan got hurt, and they said, okay, enough of this crap. Put in the backups, and we lost the game by a point in the very last second of the game. And then against another extremely dominant team, the Packers lost to the Eagles in a very close game. And again, the score doesn't perfectly reflect everything, but the Packers scored 31 points. It's hard to say the defense did a good job and the offense didn't. Now, the Eagles got put in a couple really good situations because of the offense. But, again, I wanted to go through it. For those of you that are like me that just don't really fully remember things, and then you start making up realities as you go along. You got that whole telephone game thing going on in your own head. But anyways, why don't we'll take a break here, and then I want to go through the statistics and the difference in Jordan Love from injured and not. We'll take a break. We'll be right back. So a couple things real quick. First of all, things just keep getting worse for second-round picks. I mentioned the whole holdout thing and whatnot. Well, Quinchon Judkins, who was the Cleveland Browns' 36th overall pick, we'll get to that in a minute, he got himself in a little bit of legal trouble. Arrest report here via Tom Pelissero. Accuser told police he punched her with a closed fist in the chin-lip area, later struck her in the left arm and thigh while they were in the car leaving the airport on July 7th. So that obviously is pretty crappy of a thing. Speaking of crappy things, the Browns are the reason, well, technically it's the Texans. The Texans started this whole thing. It actually further proves the point that this is on the Texans. The Texans, at 34, gave Jaden Higgins a fully guaranteed contract. The Browns followed suit because Carson Schwessinger, I hate saying his name, who was picked, the only pick in the second round picked before him, they said, okay, well, we got to give him a fully guaranteed contract. The Browns have another pick. It was 2 picks after the Texans pick. He was not given a fully guaranteed contract. So a part of me doesn't really understand this because the Browns' logic seemed to be, well, I can't not give Carson a fully guaranteed contract. Well, you can actually. And the fact that you decided to play along is the reason why Quinchon Judkins, who is your pick 36, is not signed at this point. Now, there's new reasons, but now he wants a fully guaranteed contract. You screwed yourself. So here's the thing. You want to fix this? Here's how you fix this. This is what bursts the dam. This guy screwed up. No way in the world you're giving him a fully guaranteed contract. You rail against him, scare the crap out of him. He just ruined his entire life, his entire career, whatever. After you scare the crap out of him, you put a piece of paper down, you say, sign this right now. It's a contract that is not fully guaranteed. You get him to sign the contract. You broke it. Cleveland, fix it. And Houston can go screw itself forever. That's my thought. And you want to talk about NFL collusion? I'll give you collusion. Every single team in the NFL needs to call Cleveland and say, get this guy signed. No guarantees, all right? Give him whatever you want, but it can't be guaranteed. We need our guys back, okay? The entire second round of the draft is not showing up to the NFL right now. So yes, I'm explicitly asking for collusion at this point. A couple other random things. I don't know why everybody that was a former Packer sucks now. We've got Adrian Amos, who's trying to say that Brett Favre is Jameis Winston. Screw you, maybe a little bit. He said in the follow-up tweet, he's like, I'm just trolling. Which, no, you're not. Because he goes on to explain why he said it. Brett Favre got the benefit of the doubt because he won early, but stats like 20 touchdowns, 29 interceptions, and 19 and 24 is wild. Y'all call him gunslinger, but Jameis is a turnover machine. Can anyone think of a reason why would that be? Why is Brett Favre called the gunslinger, but Jameis Winston is the turnover machine, which I've never heard that term. I mean, he is a turnover machine, but it's not like an official thing like gunslinger. I wonder why that is. I wonder what could cause the discrepancy in the way that they are viewed by NFL fans. What are the differences between Brett Favre and Jameis Winston? I don't know. I got nothing. The only thing I can think of is touchdowns and interceptions. And sometimes, because obviously we're cherry-picking Brett Favre's worst years. But yeah, I don't think anything else exists outside of that. So they're basically the exact same person. And it must just be some kind of weird prejudice that's causing this. I don't know. I'll never understand it. Then we have Rasul Douglas, somebody that doesn't have a job, and some Packer fans still want him back for some unknown reason. Pack is back. Said, I heard there's very beautiful women in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Rasul said, and who told you this? 3 question marks, LOL. So we have Adrian Amos calling one of the greatest Packers of all time, a guy that saved this franchise, Jameis Winston. We have Rasul Douglas saying women in Green Bay are ugly. And then we have Devonte Adams, who appeared on the Dan Patrick Show. He was asked about his feelings toward the Chicago Bears, and he responded that he no longer feels the intense hatred. He mentioned he has met many Bears fans since leaving the NFC North, and that they now feel comfortable to approach him. He even joked that they can be friends now. Shameful behavior. Shameful. I don't know what's happened. I don't know what's going on out there in the world. Anyways, one last thing before we dive into this. Again, PackersGames.com. Go check it out. I did make the tools free. Should be. So you do have to create an account to be able to use the stuff. But you can just go ahead and log in and use whatever you want. I barely even got started with it, but it's basically almost done. Creating a 53-man roster tracker. Not tracker, but a builder. So you'll be able to sort of create your own 53, and you can put people on the practice squad. I still have to do something as far as like pup lists and everything else to make those options. And then I'm working on a thing that's very shareable for social media, so you'll be able to display, hey, here's my 53 prediction or whatever. Not quite done, but got a large portion done in a very short period of time, just kind of screwing around. So hopefully by today-ish, tomorrow-ish, depending on how much time I can put into it, hopefully that'll be done pretty soon, and we can get the 53s up and running. All right. Let's look at some stats. What do we have? I got PFF grade, yards per attempt, big time throws percentage, turnover-worthy play rate, adjusted completion percentage, time to throw, passer rating, EPA per dropback, DVOA, turnover-worthy percentage, which it sounds like I already have that, but this is a different website, so I'm using theirs as well. Accuracy percentage and success rate. Initially, when I did this, the first thing that stands out right away is PFF grade, and to be honest, it was not what I was hoping to see. So his overall grade for the season was a 75.8, which is not terrible. There's nothing wrong with that. Immediately, when I looked at when he was healthy, it was a 75.9, almost the exact same grade. Looking at when he was hurt, it's a 72.3. There is a gap between 72.3 and 75.9, but it's not very big. So right away, I thought, I hope this isn't a waste of my freaking time. I hope I don't go and do all this and then have to come out and be like, yeah, it's not that big of a deal. Fortunately, that's not what happened. If you look at yards per attempt, hurt versus healthy, 7.4 compared to 8.6. His big-time throw rate, 3.4% when hurt, 4% when healthy. Turnover-worthy play rate, 3.9% when he was hurt, 2.2% when he was healthy. I mean, turnover-worthy plays are a problem. The fact that it was about 4%, which is high when he was hurt, and 2.2, which is relatively low when he was healthy, is very encouraging. Adjusted completion percentage, 72% when he was hurt, 77% when he was healthy. Time to throw, roughly the same, but 2.8 when he was hurt, 2.7 when he was healthy. Passer rating is massive. 77.8 when he was hurt. which sucks, like a lot. 110.3, and we'll go over like where these rank and whatnot in a minute. 110.3 passer rating in the games where he was healthy. 110.3. EPA per dropback, negative 0.006 when hurt. 0.255 when healthy. His DVOA, negative 5.5%, so that's 5.5% worse than your average quarterback when he was hurt. 38.2% when healthy. That is a shockingly big gap. Turnover-worthy play percentage, according to the DVOA site, 6.7% when he was hurt. Turnover-worthy percentage, 6.7% down to 2.7% when he was healthy. Accuracy rate, 72% when hurt, 74.5% when healthy. Success rate, 44.3% when he was hurt, 51.1% when he was healthy. So overall, his PFF grade went up 3.6 points. Yards per attempt went up 1.2 yards. Big time throw rate went up 0.6%. Turnover-worthy play rate dropped 1.7%. Adjusted completion percentage went up almost 5%. Time to throw dropped 0.12 seconds. Passer rating went up 32.5 points. EPA per dropback went up 0.261. DVOA went up 43.7%. Turnover-worthy play rate dropped 4%. Accuracy rate went up 2.1%. His success rate went up 6.8%. Which is all good and well, but for some of these, is that good? All right, being better than suck isn't necessarily good. And so I want to, we'll take a break, and then when we come back, we'll take a look at where these actually rank. In other words, if the healthy metrics were to hold for the year, where would he have been in the NFL? Take a break, we'll be right back. All right, so what I'm going to do, we'll start with PFF. Just look at, again, if we just look at his healthy stats, where does he rank? So, and I didn't do passing game specifically. It must not have been very different, I guess. But if we look at his 75.9 PFF grade, that would make him 19th, essentially right where he is right now. Well, 20th, which is his exact rank overall anyways. So it wouldn't move the needle as far as his PFF grade goes. As far as the yards per attempt, at 8.6, he would be number 2 behind only Lamar Jackson. Big time throw rate, it's actually not super high at 4. He would have been ranked 20th between Matt Stafford and Caleb Williams. His highest last year was 5.5%, which would have ranked 7th, tied with Joe Burrow. So it was a little bit down this year, kind of regardless. Turnover-worthy plays, however, remember it was from basically 4% when he was not healthy to 2.2%. 2.2% is tied with Daniel Jones, which doesn't sound good, but it's actually the 8th best in the NFL. Which, again, is really good because that was kind of the biggest issue, was the inaccuracy / putting the ball in harm's way. Well, when he was healthy, he was one of the best in the NFL at not putting the ball in harm's way. Adjusted completion percentage being at 76.9% would have been good for 15th. Again, just behind Lamar Jackson. Time to throw at 272 would put him 19th. Passer rating is really wild. He would have been number 2 in the NFL between Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow, being 110.3. Lamar Jackson was at 119.9, Joe Burrow 108.5. As we flip over to FTN, if we look at EPA per dropback, funny enough, and this is, I've been saying this for a while, if you look at some of the DVOA stats and whatnot, including EPA, Jordan Love is already very high, just for the season. I'm not talking about when healthy. Some of the more flattering numbers that are out there. For the entire season, regardless of health, Jordan Love ranks 4th in EPA per dropback. If you just look at when he's healthy, he's number 1 by a pretty wide margin. So, to give you an idea here, Jordan Love is 4th with 0.17. So let's call it 17. The next 3 are in the 20s, where you have Josh Allen 20.9, Lamar is 22.3, Jared Goff 22.9. So only 3 guys even crossed the 20s. The top 2 are at 22, Jordan Love at 25.5 by a mile. In fact, only 8 quarterbacks would be within 1/2 of that number. At number 9 is Matt Stafford at 11.6, which is not half. If you look at DVOA, Jordan Love is already number 3 on the list. Now, if you're wondering, like, it's kind of a big discrepancy, for example, if you look at PFF and DVOA. I'm trying to think, obviously different metrics and different things, but there shouldn't be that big of a discrepancy. Not that PFF said he was bad, they said he was good, but he's nowhere near 3rd. The one thing that comes very much to mind is that DVOA is going to base things much more on what you're going up against. It factors in how difficult what is across from you is. PFF does not. If you go up against the Eagles and then the next week go up against a middle school team, it's not going to adjust for that. And so you will have, a 60 grade and then a 99.9 the next week against that high school team. DVOA is what did you do above expectation. I mean, PFF is kind of that way too, but the level of competition you're playing with is not a factor for PFF. It is for DVOA. I don't know that makes up the majority of the difference here, but that is one big difference, and there's no question the Packers went up against some very difficult teams, including the Vikings and Lions 4 different times, and the Eagles twice. So just as it sits for the entire season, Jordan Love had the 3rd highest DVOA. It's Lamar Jackson, then Josh Allen, then Jordan Love. And again, well, that's a stupid stat. Okay, well, read the rest of the list. It might not be exactly as you would sort them, but it's not a completely arbitrary, stupid list, like you'll find with a lot of other stats if you just sort by. Like I said, with adjusted completion rate? When you have one of the worst quarterbacks in football at 8th, it doesn't mean it's a bad stat, but it's certainly not a very, very good stat with high correlation to how good a quarterback is overall. His DVOA for the season was 29.5, Josh Allen 33.4, Lamar 41.8. His DVOA when healthy, though, was 38.2, which would have him leapfrogging Josh Allen and actually quite close to Lamar Jackson. So he goes from a 29 to a 38, which leapfrogs Josh Allen at a 33, puts him in the high 30s, whereas Lamar is at 41.8. Turnover-worthy play percentage, let's see, just read this real quick. It says, interception-worthy throw rate, the percentage of pass attempts that were deemed interception-worthy throws. So, again, similar to what PFF has, but with different outcomes, especially on the bad end. So just real quick, going through this again, they were pretty close as far as when healthy, and they were pretty close overall. 3.2% compared to 3.5. When healthy, 2.2 compared to 2.7. When not healthy, though, PFF had him at 3.9, and FTN had him at 6.7%. Crazy high. The 2.7% still relatively high on this scale. It would have put him 15th, just behind Patrick Mahomes and ahead of Aiden O'Connell. But the 6.7% when he was not healthy, to put it into perspective, the worst on here is Trevor Lawrence at 4.2%. When he was hurt, he was at 6.7. That's just how bad that was for Jordan on when he was injured. Accuracy rate at 74.5 would put him tied for 17th with Aiden O'Connell. He ranked 23rd overall. And then finally, success rate, where he was at 48.2 on the season, which ranked 20th. When he was healthy, it was at a 51.1. That would have made him number 10 between Pat Mahomes and Jalen Hurts. So, again, I can't guarantee that all the bad is 100% because he was hurt and all the good is 100% because he was healthy. Maybe it was an easier schedule. Maybe it was this, that, or the other thing. I don't know. But to dismiss all of this and just be completely pessimistic and say, I'm going to disregard this all entirely and just come in with the assumption that he just played poorly and hopefully, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, this, at the very least, this is encouraging. It doesn't promise you anything, but let me put it this way. And I think this is a fair assessment for myself in this situation, but negative fans in general. Because everybody's very quick to dismiss things that don't align with their preconceived notions. Here's the real question. If I told you to guess, is this what you would have guessed? Because for me, the answer is no. I probably would have said the stats were worse. I would not have said when healthy, he was one of the best. He was a top 10 quarterback pretty much across the board, with the exception of a handful of stats. Never would have thought that. And that's where with negative fans, you'll catch them they won't admit it, but if they were actually honest, if you were to say things like, okay, the season wasn't great, but I'm playing into their, I thought the season was fine, but let's just say that it wasn't, would you have given them this many wins? No. Would you have thought they'd have gone and done this? They would have never guessed any of this stuff. The point is, as things go on, they just make excuses for all the good and then continue to complain about the bad. The real question is, would you have thought this? You can explain it away, and that's fine, and I'm not telling anyone to 100% accept this as proof that he's going to be elite, but if you wouldn't have thought what I just told you, then take it as a positive. Take it as something encouraging. Don't just fight against it for the sake of fighting against it, because you don't, want it to be true or think it's true or want to allow yourself to believe certain things or whatever. Some pretty wild information. All right, I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to do something I haven't done in quite a while, and that's record Packernet After Dark. You guys have a good rest of your day. I will talk to you tomorrow. Have a good one. Bye-bye.